Welcome to episode 1 of Kickin Knowledge with Yang. So basically the idea behind this series is that over here at ISH we're always engaged in these very interesting conversations around these very interesting topics, and I personally am always reading several books at any particular time around a particular theme, and so this is a way of sharing what's going on over here each week with the general public, for conversation and dialogue. And well, so today's episode is about the dark night of the soul, suffering, and the idea of post-traumatic growth. So it's a bit heavy. Not all the episodes are going to be like this, but I find it fitting to sort of start with something with some oomph, and something that's very relevant for me right now, going through this Lenten period. The theme of suffering has come up quite a lot, and this episode is being filmed right here at the ISH library. And this is important for two reasons. So this is where I draw a lot of inspiration and juice from, but this is also where the weekly bereavement support group happens. And so speaking of grief, right, and suffering, and so part of a common theme here at the bereavement group is that this is a safe place to share, and that a lot of times in the outside world with friends and family, there's this sense of not being fully understood when one has lost a loved one that's really close to them. The sense of needing a place to share the grief with people who understand, who get it, who are in the know. And sometimes you liken that to almost a sort of initiation through grief, through bereavement, because there's so many experiences that come up that are immediately relatable to everyone who's lost a loved one. And there's this shared understanding. It's almost like this little world of people who get it, who get what it is to grieve. But that's just in bereavement. But this theme goes back all the way to prehistory and shamans. So shamans were the original healers of the tribal peoples. The hunter-gatherer societies would have a shaman who healed people. There was no real distinction between mind, body, and spirit. So the healer addressed all of that in whatever rituals they did that might also include certain activities or might include particular plant medicines. And for the shaman, how does one become a shaman? Usually, whether it's the shamans in the frozen Siberian tundra or in the hot Amazonian rainforest, there's a common thread of the call, the invitation to the path. And this is usually some sort of great tribulation, either a ritualistic ordeal, but more often it's some sort of serious sickness or life catastrophe, or series of visions that disrupt the individual's life. And the more experienced people and older wise people of the tribe would know, like, all right, this is a sign that this particular person is being called to this path. And so fast forward down history to the medieval era and the idea of the dark night of the soul by St. John of the Cross. And that phrase has become popular today. Is this idea of our suffering as a necessary part of our growth, really. And no one would ask for a lot of the ordeals that happened that caused this deepening of being. So it's almost like the ordeals themselves are inevitable or unavoidable for whatever reason. And we're not trying to find, this isn't so much about finding a silver lining, but I've been playing with the idea and exploring more. It's more of working with what is. And so the catastrophe naturally, when certain other factors are in place, open us up to deeper ways of being. So that's the idea of post-traumatic growth. And we have here at the ISH, we have an annual psychotherapy and faith conference, and this year's theme is going to be around trauma. And we're having Jim Gordon, from DC, the Center for Mind Body Medicine, amongst others, come down and speak. And he deals a lot with it. I actually have his book right here on stock. Right, and I really love this book. The basic setup here, Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, is the basic setup for the 7-stage journey that Dr. James here, Dr. Gordon over here has for overcoming depression and going through it. It's a very interesting read. I recommend that. What else? There's also this book, Necessary Losses, by Judith Vios. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a very profound book. She's a psychoanalyst. She comes from a psychoanalyst background. She's not one, but she talks about the losses that we encounter in order to grow up. So going back to post-traumatic growth. So this isn't just a pop psychology term. This is a phenomenon that's being studied, and the idea is that these traumatic events, post-traumatic growth, doesn't happen to everyone, but when it does happen, usually it shows up in one of 5 ways. So whether it's overcoming a serious illness or some sort of traumatic events or crisis, 5 ways things happen. The first thing is a lot of people might report a greater appreciation of life, but also the relationships with others, whether with specific loved ones or with people in general, that the relationship with others might be transformed positively into like a more deeply fulfilling relationship and engagement and compassionate way of being with other people that might show up as a result of our suffering and us really understanding that. And that shows up a lot also going back to that bereavement group and how people talk about the ease with which they're able to comfort others when they see them going through this experience, because now they know from the inside out what it's like to be in this in that much pain. So relationships with others, greater appreciation for life, but also spiritual change. So sometimes this might be a radical shift in beliefs, in the belief system of an individual, and that of course comes with its own level of distress. And sometimes it's just a deeper understanding of one's particular spiritual path or way of being in the world. But that's another way. So that's 3 right now, right? But then there's also sometimes new possibilities, new opportunities that might open up as a result of that particularly chaotic event. So the example is the classic Chinese tale of the old man who loses a horse. Right? And he's poor, he's really beloved by his community. So everyone gathers around. He only had 1 horse and now it's gone in a storm. It ran off. And everyone gathers around. This is the worst. They're wailing and lamenting on his behalf. And the old man simply smiles and says, "We'll see." Weeks later, that horse comes back. It's actually made friends. So the old man has gone from having 1 horse to having no horse, and now having this herd of wild, beautiful horses. And of course, people gather around to celebrate his good fortune. And he simply smiles and says, "We'll see." Now, weeks down the line, his only son is breaking in the horses and falls and breaks his leg. And now this is the only adult in the house who's able-bodied and could help him around. So they come around to bemoan these hard times and the distress they must be in now as a household. The villagers come around, and the old man smiles and says, "We'll see." Now the emperor of the greater land is going to war, and the army is sweeping through the villages and recruiting able-bodied young men. Keyword, able-bodied young men. So they go through this village, and the young man has to sit this one out because he has a broken leg and doesn't go to war where he might presumably die or have any other sort of larger struggle. And so ultimately, was it good or bad? The sequence of events. Well, that's the moral of the story. This is from a Taoist perspective. And Rollo May, who has a book, The Dark Night of the Soul, in the introduction talks about how in the later years of his life, he no longer is hasty to label events good or bad, because he can notice how opportunities shift and life opportunities and movements transform in the process of living it, And so bringing that back to post-traumatic growth, we might notice new opportunities that arise out of what we might have deemed a crisis situation. And so for me, the takeaway was that we don't really know, and we wouldn't wish for these events, and we're not forcing it, trying to look for the silver lining, but we can stay open to the deepest urgings of our heart, to use flowery language, and see what comes up really for us when we go through things where we're suffering, and ultimately bringing that compassion to ourselves that also leaks out to the rest of the world. Like, this is a moment of suffering, but in this, there might be a gift. I want to end this with a favorite poem of mine. It's Khalil Gibran, On Pain, and it's just a little section that always speaks to me. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain will not seem less wondrous than your joy.